My father took me when I was about 6 years old in the dream. He took me to a place where a contract was exchanged. He sold me, but I never knew that's what it was. So I was in the dream, I was in this room. There was 2 rooms. I was in a room on my own, and he was in the room making a deal. He left, and then I was carried away by that spirit.
Remnant. Welcome to the Remnant, where you are the remnant. You're here with me, Theon Zander, where we talk about unique areas in which the Lord is leading his bride, the places where God is exposing the darkness with his light, sharing experiences of inner healing, deliverance, prophecy, all things kingdom, all things Jesus. Make sure that you like this video, that you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification, so every time we make an upload, you get notified. And remember to share this with your friends and your family. This episode is also available on our I Am platform, where you can watch this show as well as documentaries, music videos, teachings, sermons, and so much more. All you need to do is visit iamondemand.net and subscribe to our all access subscription. Okay, so now that's out of the way, I'm so excited today to introduce you a guest. And over the last few weeks, we've been talking primarily about trauma and how it affects us. If you remember the episode that I did, Your Family, Your Pain, and The Witch Next Door, I covered stuff that affects us. I covered how trauma affects us, how generational stuff affects us, how they both can intertwine with one another. And when I heard this individual's testimony, I thought it moved me a lot. And I thought it was only right that she would come on and just share her experiences with you. She's recently written a book right here called Beauty for Ashes. When I tell you, I'm not all the way through, but I'm almost all the way through. I'm halfway through. I'm on chapter 6 at the moment, and it is fairly deep, but what I find awesome about it is that you just see from the get-go, even though you see a lot of the stuff that she's going through and the trauma that she's going through, you see like Jesus literally there in the midst of it, like guiding her all the way through. And I really wanted her to come on and just share her journey to freedom. Also, you know, we've been talking how trauma can be such an open door to the enemy. A lot of us, we don't realize how much trauma can also leave us open. Even though these things happen to us, the enemy just takes advantage of these stuff, that happened to us in our lives. But through it all, you know, we see how close Jesus really is. So I would like to just welcome friend and sister Sharon Dion to the Remnant. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hello. How you doing?
You doing good? Cool.
Yes, I'm good.
You sure?
Yes.
I know you're a bit nervous, but there's no reason to be nervous. Trust me, it's all good.
Yes.
So let's just start. Let's get straight into it. I've been reading your book, Beauty for Ashes, and I heard your testimony at church. The first question I want to ask before we go into the history of Sharon and everything that you've been through, why did you feel that it was important to write about what you've been through? Why was it important that you wanted to write about the trauma, write about the journey? Why is it that you wanted to put that out?
I think for me, I always kind of was hiding behind what actually happened to me, and I didn't want anybody to know. And it was just, I looked at it as like a really kind of like an embarrassing thing. And so I felt a lot of shame to do with what I went through. So I didn't really want anybody to know. But I remember there was an altar call at church one day, and the Lord spoke to me, and he said to me to write my story. It took me quite a while to write it because I was still really hurting.
Yeah.
And I was still quite traumatized by what happened. And so it really took me a while to write it. But the Lord was saying to me that what I went through in my past, that he has healed me and he's delivered me from everything for most things that I went through back then. And so he was just giving me just the courage and the confidence just to write the story. And so I just began to write my story.
Okay. So give us a brief, well, not a brief, let's just go there. Give us the background of like how you grew up, the environment that you grew up, where you grew up, and some of the stuff that, started to happen to you, like whilst you was growing up.
When I was a little girl, I went through kind of abuse as far as I remember. I must have been about maybe 4 or 5 years old. And I went through abuse. I don't ever remember in my family home a time when I wasn't being afflicted. And so it kind of started, my memories go back to like I said, about 4 or 5, where I was being regularly beaten by my father. And the beats were severe, and even for such a young girl. And I was starved, or when I was like didn't go like days and days without food. I didn't have regular meals, shall I say? And so we could only eat if he allowed us to eat, or worse, when I can only eat if he allowed me to eat. But it was so traumatic that I couldn't form thoughts properly. I couldn't think properly. I couldn't sleep. When I was going through the physical abuse from my father, in my waking state at night, I would be having these dreams where I was being abused. So I was going through it in the daytime and in the nighttime. Okay. And so it was just like, it was like this constant cycle of abuse. And I would be kicked, punched, choked. And, I was beaten with a belt, all kinds of different things. And, every hit and every strike that I had just told me that I was hated, and because it was just like I just couldn't function normally. And so I went through my mother being there, but she was going through her own ordeal with my father. So she couldn't even protect me. And my sisters, they were going through things as well. So we all had our own to carry, and we couldn't really help each other, but just to endure what we had to go through. And so when I was younger, and then I remember a time that I must have upset my father, done something, or I thought I did something. So I hid, and we had like this room called, we called it the coal room. That's where he kept sacks of coals. We had one of those fires, and coal fires back then. And so I used to sort of like, I knew when he was angry, so I would go up to my hiding place. So I would just go in and hide. And he came in one day, and he was so angry and with me. And I think all it is, I actually got out, so I wasn't allowed out of the house. And so I stayed in there, and I actually felt, I can hear him raging outside. My brothers were just trying to find me, and I fell asleep in this room. And I remember in this particular dream, the Lord visited me in the dream and told me that I had to come out of the coal room. But I was just so afraid. I kept.
Did you know the Lord at this time? Did you know Jesus at the time, or was this? How did you know it was? Not really. How it was the Lord?
I just started having dreams. At first, I didn't know it was him. I didn't know. I just saw it as a person that was helping me. And that was helping me. That I was just like, so the dream went sort of like this, that when I had the dream, he was like, that come out of the cold room. But I said, if he does that, he will kill me. And those were my words. Right. And I knew that was what was going to happen because he was so angry. And he said that he will not kill you. And he said, for I am going to save you. And then he gave me the confidence and the courage because I believed and I trusted every word that he said. And then eventually when I woke up from the dream, I think it must have been coming to daylight, and I came out of the cold room, and they had been searching for me for most of the night, I suppose. And so my father, he was raging when I came out. He was just so angry. And when I stood before him, he already had his weapon, whatever he had different ones he would use, to hurt me. But like he was already there, and he raised his hand to strike me, but then his hand could not come down. It was like he couldn't hurt me at that point. And I remember just standing there shaking and the adrenaline running through my body. I was so terrified. I didn't know whether I'd been hit or not because I was just shaking so much, and my eyes were closed, expecting him to hurt me that way. So what happened after that, I went into the back room where my mother was and my sisters, and I didn't know if I'd been hit or not, but then I believed that I was spared. At that point, I was spared from that beating, but it wasn't always like that. There's more after that happened.
Okay.
So that was
you
like
were
the
spared
first
that
dream
time.
I remember.
But you spared that time, yeah. But then like other times, there were other times where actually he still did abuse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was spared that time. So it went on for a couple of more years, and then we got taken out of, I was taken out of the home and I was placed in the care home.
Right.
And so that went on for a while, and regularly being beaten by my father. It was like an everyday occurrence. And then whilst I was still living in my father's house, it was he didn't want no outside influences. He didn't want anybody to interfere with his family and what he was doing in the house.
Right.
But it got to the point where he had no choice but to send us to school.
Okay.
And so because, as the government was speaking to him about, having to send the children to school, otherwise this, that, and the other is going to happen. So he felt like he had no choice. Mm-hmm. But when we went to school, we was like, they could see that we was neglected. They could see that we was abused. I would go to school black and blue, basically, bruises all down my front, my arms, my legs, and my clothing was, dirty, and I wasn't clean. My face was dirty. My hair was messy, and I was sent to school like that. So what they would do, they would take me to the medical room and wash me. And when they used to wash me, they used to see all the bruises and the cuts and the bruises, some old, some new. And but then after that, they just kind of sent me back home to my father day after day, week after week, month after month. And that was just like the cycle. That's what was happening. And so even though they see what it is, they were so afraid of my father. The school was afraid, that everybody seemed to be afraid of him. I was terrified of him, and it was just, so after that, I just, we went through that for a little while, but it was only when there was sexual abuse in the house, which wasn't myself or my sisters. It was when that happens, then that's when the police got involved, and that's when he was forced to release the children. But he didn't go down without fighting. He fought the police.
Wow.
And everyone that came to the house. And then eventually we was taken out of the house.
Okay. Did you, like growing up, right? You grew up in London? Did you grow up in London?
Yes.
Okay, you grew up in London. And how many like brothers and sisters do you have? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, from my mother and my father, there was 4 of us, 4 girls.
Okay, 4 girls.
And my father's previous marriage, there was 3. There was 2 boys and a girl.
Okay. So in the home, how many were in the home? Were you
There's
all
8 of
living
us
together?
altogether.
Eight of us. Eight of you
Yeah,
together.
excluding 8. Yeah, and
Okay.
excluding my parents. Yeah.
Okay. Did you think like what was going on was normal? Did you, because obviously like when we're children, it's like what we see a lot of the times we just think like everybody goes through the same thing, or this is just a normal thing to happen. Did you think it was normal, or and if you did, when did you kind of find out that maybe there's something that's not right here?
I thought it was normal, and because I kind of blamed myself for a lot of the things that I felt like I just kept doing things to make him angry.
Okay.
And so I blamed myself, and just thought I just couldn't behave properly. And so for me, it became normal because when I was seeing him beating up my mother as well, and she went through some brutal violence, and I thought this was just a normal situation. I had nothing to compare it to. I wasn't allowed out the house. I had nothing to compare it to.
Wow. We've talked about like heart beliefs in like previous episodes, heart beliefs that can be either like passed down, heart beliefs that we have from like childhood trauma. And I think I mentioned a few. Like what were some of the heart beliefs that you really believed? I think you mentioned, that you believed that it was all your fault. Were there like other beliefs that you had that kind of carried on even into like adulthood?
I believe that I was born to be hated, and that's why I believe that I wasn't supposed to have been born. And because of my mother, she told me later when I was about 15 that she tried several self-abortion attempts. And she told me that she tried that, and because she couldn't go for a legal abortion, because I think the rules back then, like if there has to be something wrong with the child or not to be married, and she was married, and so so she went through like self-abortion. She tried to do self-abortion, shall I say, and because of what she told me, I always had this belief that somehow I wasn't supposed to live, and I did die in the womb. And then, then I was, I was resuscitated and I was on life support. So the kind of belief that I had was that I wasn't supposed to be here. I was never supposed to be here. And by some accident or something that I was here. And after, when I was going through all of the beatings and so forth, I was convinced in my mind that I was never supposed to have lived. I was never supposed to have been here. Wow. And my father kept saying to me that you're not my child, and all these things he kept saying all throughout most of his life. Even when I was speaking to my mother and I kept asking her, am I his child? Am I his child? And she kept saying that, that she didn't care what he says, that, you are his child. But he was absolutely convinced that I wasn't. And I guess I believed him. And I guess I believed him. And I didn't feel any connection to him whatsoever. It wasn't just because of the beatings. And I believe that, that he hated me and he wanted to hurt me very, very badly. And he was forced to raise a child that wasn't his. Wow.
It's like,
so that was,
there's so much like conflict at such like a young age.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess it's like, you have this belief is obviously you have this belief of, believing that that you wasn't meant to be alive. And I guess that ties to like not feeling wanted as well. So like, how did that play out in your life? Like, did you have any friends? And, you know, when you got older into work, how did you manage that? Was that a thing that was always coming back to you that, you know, I'm not meant to be here, or, you know, I'm not wanted, so why should I, you know, fight for a friendship or fight for this job or fight for whatever? How did it keep creeping up?
When I was younger, growing up, I did feel rejected by everybody. And as I grew up, I got to the point where I started rejecting people before they can reject me, because I got used to the cycle of rejection. So I would have friends, and then it was really good for a while. And I felt like, yes, I can trust them, and they're my friends, and, you know, I can trust them and so forth. And we'd hang out together. But then something would happen that would cause a problem, and then next thing I knew, they were my enemies. And I noticed that was like a cycle that kept on happening. And so it got to the point where I just didn't trust anybody, because I thought, well, at some point along the line, they're going to turn on me. Yeah, you know. And I had that mindset that I need to be on my guard. I have to, you know, put my guard up, and I had to put up so many walls. And I thought, can I really trust this person? You know, and it got to the point where I couldn't. But yes, I did have friends. I went out with friends, and, you know, for a while, but like it never really lasted, because those feelings of rejection and abandonment was always there, and whether I could really trust them. Yeah. You know, and I became so convinced that my father was doing other things spiritually. It wasn't just, you know, the physical things that he was doing. It was like the kind of example I would give, that when I was in the care home, I didn't realize that they were writing reports on me. Like every day they would write report, like, was I happy? Was I sad? Did Sharon wake up crying today? And they're writing all kinds of things. And I wasn't aware of that until one of the other kids in the home said that, you know, they're writing reports on us. It's in the office and so forth, and they're doing these things. And then my sister found out, and then she had made a friend there. So they decided to go in the office and read these reports. So they were making documented reports about us, but they never gave these reports to my father. But I thought they did, because when we had to go to him on the weekend, he would say everything that we was doing in the home. And so it's almost like, you know, I was being watched. Right. I was being monitored. Even, you know, and it was just, he wasn't there. And because what happened, when it went to court, the case went to court, the judge decided to give him visitation rights, not just to visit. He was allowed to have us for weekends. Yeah. Where we had to go there every weekend. There was a court order. And so we were forced to go there, and I didn't want to go there. So I would say to the workers of the home, I don't want to go there. He doesn't want me there, and I don't really want to go there. So they said that we can't tell your father not to take you, but you have to be the one to tell him. And I was terrified, just really scared. But I kind of, you know, plucked up the courage one day, and I said, I don't want to come this weekend. I want to stay here. And but it's like he still knew everything that I was doing. So I blamed the home for a while, saying, you were telling him things, you know, and he's been abusing me for years. You know, you've been telling him things, and but, you know, they hadn't, but he knew. So I felt like I didn't really have much of an escape. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna definitely delve into that area. I think you said something that is like so important. You mentioned like the rejection that you felt, and like pushing people away even before they did anything. And you know, for the last like few weeks, in the last video, a couple of the videos we did, like we talked about, you know, those inner vows that we take, where it's kind of like, you know, on one side, you know, you vow that I'm going to do everything kind of not to be rejected. And then the other side is like, you feel like you deserve to be rejected. So it's like, you know, it's almost like, it's not even necessary just demonology, so to speak, but it's like the fact that it's like a posture of your heart. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that you've believed this in your heart and it's just manifesting in your life. Like, do you know what I mean? And Bible talks about, your out of your heart flow the issues of life. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes if our hearts are believing the wrong things because of trauma, because of stuff that happened to us, it's like we find our lives like going in those cycles. You mentioned as well that your mum, you was in an abusive household, and your dad was very abusive, and with the violence and hitting and kicking, but when it comes to that rejection, because a lot of times, like we've spoken on here about how things can be like generational, and I know you talked about like even in the womb, there was discussion about and your mum tried to abort you as well. Like if you was to go a generation like above, like did your mother or did your father like experience the same kind of rejection as well? Like what was their kind of relationship?
I remember my father said that he was adopted. So he was given up by his parents, and so he was raised by another family, and that's what I remember him telling me. My mother, she went through difficulties as well, because she said that that when she was pregnant and outside of marriage, and it was very, very bad then to be pregnant outside of marriage. So what she had to do, she had to give up the child, and which I found really, really hard, because like she had to give up the child, but the child was raised in her home as her brother and not as her son. So
that's a lot of things.
So because then she said that she, and we're talking about like in the maybe 1930s, late 30s or something like that. And so instead of, because that's the only way she would be allowed, obviously, to have the baby. And back then, abortions were illegal then, so she had to have the baby. Yeah. And so he was raised as her brother, and he never knew anything different.
Did he ever find out?
So she did tell him before she passed away, but he never
believes it.
I don't know. It was just so deep. He just couldn't deal with it. He just didn't believe it, because he always believed that her parents were his parents. And so that's what she said to me and my sisters, that so she had a child, and so she had to grow up as her brother.
Wow.
And then she went further on. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, further on, she got married, and then she had another child, and he died, and he died in the bathtub, and then her husband he killed himself. So there was a lot of tragedy with my mother from then, from what she was having to deal with. So she had low self-esteem and things. So there was things happening with her as well.
Wow. So it's like, and I just think it's amazing, because I think sometimes it's only as we get older and we get inquisitive, and with the help of the Lord, it's like where we start looking at like the bigger picture of like where we come from and like what's happened, not only in our lives, but like in the lives of our lineage, so to speak. Like, do you know what I mean? Like all of these patterns and all of these cycles, and a lot of the times as children, like we think a lot of stuff, our heart just wants to believe that it's all our fault. Like that's the first thing that we want to believe, because it's like we don't know anything else. We don't know history. We don't know how important history is. But when we get older and, we're seeking for freedom, we see like not only is, our trauma like important, obviously, but it's like we don't see the pattern of trauma that gets passed down from like generation to generation to generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to your father as well, it's like, you know, you had how old were you when you went to the foster home?
8.
Wow, he's that young. Okay. So when you was 8 years old, it was like, and they were writing the reports, it was like you was thinking like, what's going on?
Yeah, I was in the home from when I was 8 until I was 16. I think 16 when I was allowed to leave, and so it was kind of like another institution. That's how I saw that, and because I wasn't actually allowed to leave there until I was 16, until the care order was revoked, and I had my own freedom.
Yeah, and
so, but you know, so I was 8 years old, and so when I got older, we found out about those reports that's being made, and we had to meet with a social worker. She used to come to the home every so often and just to find out updates to how we were getting on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so we found out about reports were being written about us, and there was just you know, and as I started to get older, I started to get a bit rebellious, and so they had plenty to write about me.
Yeah.
And so you know, so all these things were just written in this report, and then the social worker, they had their reports that with the social services, and so there was just reports written about me, and things that my father just knew as well.
And like, when did it? And go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go.
And what I did later on, not too recently, a few years ago, I actually managed to get those reports, and so I read those reports. I was able to get them.
Well, recently.
So I started to read. Yeah.
What made you want to do that?
So I read what they wrote about me. I don't know. It's kind of, I kind of just wanted to, I guess I was just searching just to find out, was I this bad kid that they made me out to be? You know, I guess I was just trying to find out. And I know I was rebellious, and I rebelled against authority, and they saw me as a difficult child and so forth. So, it's only because of what I went through, and so I guess I just wanted to see what they said. And when I read what they said, it was just, I don't think there's anything good in there.
Yeah.
Nothing really.
When did you find out? Obviously, you said like something spiritual was going on with your dad, and you kind of had some inkling because of these reports. When did it come out that you knew something was off? When you knew that maybe he's involved in something crazy?
Okay. I remember when I was younger, and must have been one of the weekend visits, and we had to go to his home every weekend. Yeah. I wasn't allowed in his bedroom, so I went in there for something, and I think I was looking for a photograph, and because somehow a photographer came and took pictures of me and my sisters, and the pictures were given to him, and I didn't want him to have my picture, so I went to go find it.
Okay.
So I went in the bedroom to look for it when he was out. And when I walked into the bedroom, I saw standing in the corner, it was like this spirit standing there. And when I walked in the room, it was like its head was down, but like when I went to the room, its head was lifted, raised, and it was watching me. So I remember running out because I was terrified by what I saw.
You saw this physically? Trying
to tell my sisters. Huh?
You saw this like physically with your like naked eyes?
Yeah, no, I saw it in the spirit.
You saw it in... Tell all right, hold on. Because we talk about this as well, as like how people see, because like some people see like, as I see you like here, or I see like my wife in the room, I can physically see you. Then some people see like in their kind of imagination, and...
no, yeah.
How were you seeing it? Were you seeing it like physical?
Yeah, it was... What I saw, it was standing in the corner of my dad's bedroom, and I saw it, the only way I can describe it, it's like I didn't see it in some other place. It was literally in the room.
Yeah.
And so how I saw that, it was just like open eye vision, and I saw it standing there.
Right.
And when I was younger, I saw that. And so I ran out the room scared. And I told my sisters, but they came in, they didn't see anything. I was the only one that saw it. So they just thought I was crazy.
So did you go back in with them? Did you go back in with them when you told them?
Yeah, I went back in there. And
so you saw it and they weren't seeing it?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Wow.
So they just thought I was just crazy, just making things up. And there's other things I started to see. And I started to tell my brother, this is what I'm seeing. And I started to, I kind of went through like a little bit like a Joseph kind of moment. We start telling your dreams and your visions. And then they just want to silence you. And this is the stage that I was going through when I was saying, because I didn't understand about what I was seeing. So I started telling my brother, I started telling, my sisters, but they just didn't really fully sort of like understand. And it got to the point when, and I kept saying that, Jesus is going to come save me. And my brother said, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save you. I said, yes, he said he's coming to save me. He's coming to save me. And so it got to the point where, and I remember my mother saying to my father, you can't stop her from dreaming, because my dreams start to really disturb him.
All right.
And
let's talk about the dreams. I remember
my mother saying that.
Let's talk about the dreams, because we covered dreams. What were some of the dreams that you were having from a little kid? And I know in your book you also mentioned that your dreams started to change after a certain point, right? Okay. So what were the nature of your dreams growing up?
When I was young, I was seeing I was seeing a lot of the things that was being done to me to do with the attacks I was going through. I was being pinned down in my bed like night after night. And this happened when I was in the care home, and there were all these snakes underneath my bed. And some would just literally sort of like come up. It's almost like it formed like a cage around my bed. All things that would just rise up. And so that was just so terrifying. And now I'd be pinned and I can't move. And I'm just laying there, and all I can move is my head, and I'm seeing everything that's going on in the room. I'm seeing witches in the room. I'm seeing demons in the room, and I just can't move. So that was like a regular thing that I was going through.
And you're also terrified.
And definitely. Yeah. I was just, it was just got to the point where I was so scared to go to sleep. And when I would try, and I couldn't speak to the care workers or anybody, because like, how could they help me? I couldn't be helped. So I became tormented by the dreams. So I was going through those kind of tormenting things, and to the point where I didn't want to go to sleep. I was scared to go to sleep. I tried to, my sisters there, where they were trying to comfort me, but like they didn't understand what was happening to me. And it was just a regular thing that kept on happening. And then I kept seeing witches, and these witches kept wanting to, if they weren't trying to do bad things to me, they wanted at one point to try and teach me what they do.
Okay.
And so that was after I found out, that was after to do with the covenant, because when I was covenanted, that's what those things were starting to happen. But it never really took with me. So it kind of went through one ear and out the other. It just never really took with me. So, so after that, it was just so many dreams that I was just having. And then I had another dream when I saw the Lord again in this dream. But I was with these witches. And so...
Did you know that they were witches?
And I said, oh yeah, I knew they were witches. Yeah.
Is it because of what they said? Like, how did you know? Like, were they doing stuff? Were you going places?
No, they were doing spells, incantations, those kind of things. I was hearing those things. No, I was hearing them do it. I didn't. It could have been over me, actually. I don't know, but I was hearing them say those things and do those things. And then what happened? I said I saw a man in the light, and I said, "Who's that man in the light?"
In the spirit.
They said, "We don't look at the light."
Is this in the spirit? And
in the dream.
In the dream. Okay, cool. In the dream, which is kind of like in the spirit.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to be specific in the dream.
No, it's fine.
So anyway, yeah. So when I saw the Lord in the light, and so they said, we don't look at the light, we ignore it. But I was just so captivated by him. And I knew there was something about him that was just different to what I was surrounded with.
Yeah.
You know, what I was seeing. I didn't like where I was, and I couldn't control it because it's like they had control over me. Right. And I couldn't control it. But when I was seeing him, he was just so captivating, and I just wanted to know more. So then when I came out of the dream and I went into another dream several days later, then I was before him, and he said to me again that he's going to save me. So I knew that he was my savior. And so that what happened when I was a little girl. And but I still had to go through a lot of other things.
Did he introduce himself at any stage? Did he say his name? Did he how did you know this guy was your savior?
Yeah, because when in one of the dreams that I had, I said in one of the dreams that I had, and I said, who are you? And he introduced himself as Jesus.
Mate. What?
And that's, it wasn't God. It wasn't this. It was that he said, I am Jesus. And then I knew. And when I started saying to my brothers, Jesus is coming to save me. And he said, no one is coming to save you. But I knew and I believed that he would come to save me. And several years later, I was saved.
Wow.
And that was just a promise.
When he appeared in the dream, could you see his features, or was it just like light shining?
No, it was just light, and it was just like light, and just like something like you can see. It was like a person that was in that light. Right. Wow. But it was the voice. That the voice and how he spoke to me.
The voice.
But so it wasn't like can't see, you couldn't see his physical features. No, I couldn't see that. But it was just the voice, and I just knew that it was him.
Did you have any Christian background in your family? Did you go to Sunday school or anything?
Actually, yes, I did. But before that, when I used to go out for food, when I was a little girl, when I was at my father's house, there was a Christian couple across the road. They were friends with my father at one point, but then when they started speaking to him about how we were being kept, he cut off communication with them. But I still went over there, and they fed me, and they prayed for me. And the lady, she had these scriptures on the wall and prayers on the wall. And so when she would see my condition, she would literally just go in the kitchen and start crying and praying, and I'm in the other room just eating. And so I went, that's where I got food from mostly. And my sister did the same thing. So my brother knew where I would go. And when my father was coming back one day, he said, you need to come back now, he's coming. And so my brothers knew that I would go there, and that's why I would eat. And that was just a regular place I went. And then not long after that, they moved to America.
Wow. Did you ever see
then they were no longer there.
By curiosity, did you ever see your dad in your dreams?
In my dreams?
Yeah.
Later on, I did see my dad in my dreams, not so much when I was younger. Apart from one time, there was once, but I think that was more to do with my deliverance, actually, because when I came to Christ, when I was having deliverance and I was seeing him,
all right.
Yeah, I was having dreams about what he'd done.
All right, we're going to get to there, but tell us how. So you've gone from the abuse, you've gone from even these dreams and Jesus kind of introducing himself. How did you end up fully giving your life to the Lord? When did that happen? Guys, I know you probably want to scream at me right now because I know it's heating up. I know like things are getting excited right now, but bear with me. We're going to split this episode into 2 parts, okay? So make sure that you tune in next week, because next week we're going to be talking about, you know, how God began to heal Sharon. So stay tuned. If you would like to partner with us, please visit our website and subscribe to our all access subscription. If you would like more information on other ways you can partner, please visit iamondemand.net/partner.